So in this video we are trying to understand the basics of segmentation. As we discussed in the class, the idea of segmentation is very easy. So to understand segmentation, it's better to start with a case of one variable. So in the class we had discussed the case of starting with the one variable, which is a preference for ice cream. So we said that suppose preference for ice cream is a scale which is ranging from 1 to 7, and people are distributed over this scale. Different people are following this scale. So if we want to segment these customers who are spread out in this scale, suppose like in this manner, so we can segment easily. So we can say that this group is one segment and this group is one segment. We can call this segment 1, segment 2 and segment 3. So it is simple. The segmentation is simple and when you have only one variable. Can have any such segments. So we call this is on preference to ice cream. And the problem is that you're segmenting the customer base based on this variable preference to ice cream, for which we have the past data. But if you want to target any of this customer base, for example this customer base, if you want to target in the future, it's difficult because in the future when you see a customer, you do not know what his preference to ice cream is. So though we understand that there are customer segments exist, we will not be able to target. If we want to target, if we are planning to target them, we will not be able to target. So that's where the idea of profiling comes into picture. So what profiling brings to us, what we do in profiling is, so now we know that there are three segments exist. So we will find one variable on which these three segments vary, and also this profiling variable should be practically feasible for us to get the data on. For example, if you are taking a profiling variable like age, and if you are mapping the ages of these three segments, and if you are finding out that this segment comes in the age group of 5 to 10, this comes in the age group of 10 to 15, and this comes in the age group of 15 to 20, for example. So if we find such a result, and if you want to target this segment, you just have to target this segment using the age group of 10 to 15 to target segment 2. So there are two key ideas in segmentation. One is you segment based on some variables, then you do the profiling based on some variables. we can do segmentation based on any variables of your interest. But when you choose a profiling variable, should be practically feasible for us to collect data in the future. And based on these variables, the segments should have a difference. So you basically try to do a t-test or ANOVA to identify which is the appropriate segmenting profiling variable. We will do one more example. Same example we will do it in the class. So we had also talked about, suppose we are doing segmentation using two variables. So we had taken CGPA and salary. And suppose if we are taking the data and we might found that one segment like assist here, so then another segment assist here. So based on the data, we are able to identify that there are two segments assist. And suppose if we in the future, so this segmentation is now based on the past data. Suppose in the future if you want to target to any of these segments, suppose this data was collected on your batch and we have found that two segments exist, and if we want to target any of these segments, for example this segment, because when the next batch comes, these two variables are not available for us, so we will not be able to identify who are in this segment. So this is where we will do the segmentation for the profiling. So if we try a profiling variable, suppose I am trying work experience, and using a t-test, suppose I found that the people in this category have high work experience and people in this segments have low work experience. So in the future, to target this segment 1, I just need to select all the customers who have high work experience. So segmentation, so profiling comes as a bridge between segmentation and targeting. So without profiling, you will not be able to adequately target the customers. So I will repeat, profiling is the act of identifying a practically feasible variable for us to track such that the segments or these groups vary in terms of that variable. So just by looking at, by selecting that variable and its particular levels, we will be able to target any particular segment effectively. Maybe we will use one more example that we did in the class. So we had used an example of those who talk in the class and those who sleep in the class. and there are two groups. Suppose if we found there are two groups, and we said that suppose the director wants to avoid this group who is constantly talking in the class and who is constantly sleeping in the class. And because this data has been collected for you, like, we will not be able to know to identify or to target this group, to avoid this group in the future. To do that, we will use the profiling exercise again now. We will try to find some variables on which these two groups 1 and 2 differ. So one of such variables, after a thorough discussion, we had arrived is like sports. So we said that those who are in the first group might be better, maybe active sports, maybe. So they might be maybe like much inactive in terms of sports or other physical activities. So sports might be a variable which we can use to profile. That means like we'll find that these people are different, these two groups are different in terms of this variable, and by looking at that profiling variable itself we'll be able to target any of this group effectively. So for the director to take a decision to avoid these groups, we will be only selecting those who are active in sports, so that only this group, so the chances of only people in these groups increases. So this is segmentation. So most of the segmentation purpose, as we said in the class, a segmentation based on one variable or a segmentation based on two variables will be enough for most of the practical purposes. But still there are cases in which you will have to segment based on many variables. So in such cases you will resort to do cluster analysis. Okay, something happened. So that's all.